What's up, family? How you guys doing today? Adel here from Milky Tech, and we're back to continue our PC building series. Let's get this done. Before I even put any of the parts in the case, I like to test everything on the bench first. The first thing we're going to do is install the CPU. In order to install the CPU, you remove this retention lever up and bring this all the way up. Make sure that none of the pins look bent and it doesn't look bent. Next, we get the CPU, and one thing we got to make sure is that this gold triangle is matching with the triangle over here. So when we install it, we're going to put it in like this. And now it's installed. And now we put this down here. And we bring this down. That pops out. And the CPU is installed. So the next thing we want to do is install the CPU cooler. We go in our Noctua accessory box. First we get our backplate. And we just run it right through it. Next, we will put these plastic spacers so that we don't have any short problem, and then we'll fry the motherboard and the CPU, and that is no bueno. Next, we install our mounting bars over here, and we screw them on. Make sure to not put a lot of pressure when you're screwing this on. You'll put just enough pressure for it to hold and be very tight, but not so much that you crack the motherboard. The next thing I like to do is always clean off the CPU with isopropyl alcohol. I know these are brand new parts, but I'd rather always have a nice clean surface so that we have the optimal amount of heat transfer from the CPU to the heatsink. Next, we want to detach the mounted fan. Next, we'll put some thermal paste on here. You want to put, well, there are multiple ways of applying this. The easiest way is just to put a pea size. And next, we shall put the CPU cooler. Now we're trying to screw this on. Whew. This is under a lot of pressure. You want to go evenly on each side so you put an even amount of pressure on the CPU and motherboard so you don't damage anything. Now it's installed, and now we want to reinstall the fans. On the bottom of the fans, it tells you the direction of the airflow, and you want air to go across the fins, and the arrow points that way, so that's how we want to install it. And now we want to plug in the cooler fan into the CPU fan port. And that's it over here, CPU fan, and that's where you want to connect it. Next, we want to install the RAM. Usually on every motherboard, there is a diagram on it to tell you where to install it, so you can get the maximum performance out of it. In this case, this motherboard is a dual channel motherboard, and it tells you here that A1 and A2 is these two over here. So you want to install your first two sticks over here. In order to install the RAM for this motherboard, you pop these two pins back and these two back. You get the motherboard, you line up the slots, make sure the notch is lined up with a notch. So it should look something like that. And then you just slide it down, you apply pressure, clicks, 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 and then done. And then you repeat. Right now we have the CPU and the RAM installed. What I like to do at this point is test out, make sure that everything is working. So a simple test is just to plug the power supply in, and we short out the power button switch on the motherboard to turn it on. So first we want to install the 24-pin motherboard connector. And it's right in. Next we install the 8-pin CPU connectors. So I want to short out 2 pins over here, and that will be the power switch. So I'll just click here. And so the light come on, all the lights come on, the fan is running, everything is running. We're posted. We are good to go to continue on. Now that we know that the system works, let's install our M.2. The M.2 drive goes right over here. So what we want to do is take that screw out. Just put it in here, slide it in, and it clicks right in. Our M.2 is installed. Alright, so next thing we want to do is get the case and slap this guy in there. Normally at this step, before we install the motherboard, we want to install the motherboard risers, which are these right here. Well, like by this case, it comes pre-installed, but cheaper cases might not have that installed, and you'd have to go in and install them. Yes. We gotta install it. Now we want to install our I/O shield. In order to install the I/O shield, it's very simple. You put it in here and it will just pop right in. Normally. So you're gonna just pop that in here and pop that in there. Make sure all sides are popped in, and you want to make sure everything is nice and flush. So now we want to install this glorious motherboard. Let's grab it from here. Time to screw this on. I like this tool over here, which just has a little spinning thing over here. So when you're screwing, you can screw really quick. All tools and equipment used in this video will be located in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe. Remember guys, this is a 3-part series and we will be testing and benchmarking this in the next video. And if you guys haven't seen my previous video where I did on the unboxings for all of these computer parts, I will have a link up here and in the description. Now that we have the motherboard and CPU, everything situated inside of the case, let's put our power supply in. When installing this power supply, make sure that the fan is pointed down, not from the top, because we have the intake from the bottom. Before we put the power supply in, we want to connect the connectors that we need. So we're going to need the connector for the graphic card. And honestly, that's all we need. But just in case we need to put a future hard drive in, I will put one of these in here. In order to install this power supply, we're just going to slide it right in. We're going to screw it in. So now, what we want to do is route the cables to where we want them to go. I like what Lian did over here. Instead of having each cable individual like you find in most other cases, they connected all together and made it one big ribbon. And that makes cable management so much easier. These are at the bottom of the motherboard, so we want them to go from the bottom. This is our USB 3.0 cable. We'll go from here. The motherboard cable will come out from up here. The CPU cable will be from the top, and the graphic card cable will come from here. Of course, we'll come back and we will tidy this up in a second. Alright, so now let's connect all the connectors, which is the hardest part, really. Especially since I got the ginormous hands. Next, we're going to get the motherboard in. Next, we want to install the USB 3.0 cable. Okay, you just want to plug that in. Boom, click right in. Next, we're going to do the I/O cables. I want to separate these out a little bit. This is your front audio, and that connects back there where the audio is. And then we have a power switch. There is no reset switch, but we got a power LEDs. There is no activity light. Alright, so the first two will be power positive, goes over here. Power negative goes over here for the LEDs. And then our power switch. And that's how that looks. Of course, we'll clean this up later on, make it look really pretty. Alright, so next we're going to install the graphic card. But first we have to remove a few things. In order to access the PCI expansion slots, we have to remove this thumb screw over here and this other thumb screw over here. And then this pops right out. Now since this is a dual slot card, let's install the back fan before we do anything. Plugged in. Alright, let's plug in our graphic card. Let's grab this. This goes in right over here. Push down, it clicks in. Graphic card is installed. And the screws. Now that we have the graphic card installed into the motherboard, let's put in our power connectors. And now let's install our network adapter. That plugs in right there. That plugs in right over here. Let's plug right into the USB port. Alright, let's install the last fan. And it's plugged in. Let's do one final test before we do a cable management. Hey, it's on! Next time I want to show you guys something, a little bit of an art, cable management. There's no right way to do this, but in the end, it will look amazing, and that's why we do it. Let's just pull all the cables out. And now, for every PC builder's best friend, zip ties. What I like about this case, it has a lot of mount points, so we could do our cable management nicely. Let's cover this bad boy back up. And this concludes our tutorial for building a PC. Our next part will be installing all the softwares and running benchmark. If you guys haven't seen the previous video, I'll have a link for it in the description. Guys, don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell so you can see the next part of this series. Smash that like button and leave a comment or a suggestion in the comment below. And I will see you guys next time. Peace.